Hello, everybody. On behalf of Restart, I'm very happy to present award-winning producer-editor Atanas Georgiev, who has prepared his masterclass titled Crafting Reality, the Genesis of a Narrative. This is the 52nd masterclass organized by Restart, and we would like to thank the Multimedia Institute for their support on this occasion. Atanas Georgiev is the founder of Choice Films and Film Trick and a professor at Shanghai University, guiding aspiring filmmakers. Internationally acclaimed for his debut Cash&Marry and the festival favorite Avec l'Amour, Atanas reached the pinnacle with Honeyland, a triple winner at Sundance and double Academy Award nominee. His recently edited film Hollywood Gate premiered at the Venice Film Festival, underscoring his commitment to cinematic excellence. His collaboration with Darren Aronofsky on the unreleased documentary Victor adds another layer to his illustrious career. Simultaneously contributing to academia, Atanas shapes the future of filmmaking at Shanghai University. And in editing, his latest work, Against the Tide, premiered at Sundance 2023, cementing his status as a skilled storyteller. Atanas Georgiev's journey blends award-winning productions, prestigious premieres, collaboration, and academic leadership, leaving a lasting impact on the global cinematic stage. Atanas, please, you can take over.
Thank you for this lovely introduction. Right now I'm in Skopje, but recently I decided to move to Shanghai. And this is my studio, editing studio here in Skopje, which is part of a big production company, which is called FX3X. And behind me, you can see this fish tank with fish. But actually, they are one of the most important editing consultants in our studio, because they've been through all of our materials as silent viewers, and they had chance to see all the interesting things that we've been going through. So yeah, it's a kind of a nice introduction to what my studio is and my colleagues out there. As far as I heard, you as participants now, you are aspiring documentary filmmakers. So I'll try to focus on documentary filmmaking and how to actually keep motivated in this very, very difficult profession, because being a documentary filmmaker now, I mean, it was always hard, but especially coming from this region, it's something that it's a blood and tears, right? And as far as I remember back in my university years when I was studying, I had very interesting motivation how to start. Actually, I started as a film and TV editor. I was learning editing, and at the first year in the academy, we had exercise to do a short documentary, and it was back in my childhood, like I was early in the teenage years, and the first time I was walking in the park, and I saw a group of people doing dogfights, and I had, that was a serious impact what I saw that day. And when I was told, okay, let's do an exercise in the first year at the academy, short documentary, I decided to do something about exactly that scene, because that stayed in my memory. And why I'm saying this is that whenever I was trying to understand for a film how good it is, I had one criteria about that, is that more time you spend thinking about the film means that this film was really good. If you forget it next day, that means that something is wrong. right? You don't just forget your films that really impact you. So at that year, it was 96. It really somehow shaped my destiny as a documentary filmmaker. Although I've been working for many fiction productions as well, but this thing, I'm still saying that this film actually is the best film that I ever did. And very few people saw it. Maybe I can share it with you in just 8 minutes. Why I want to share this film with you is something that we will discuss it a little bit later. I'll put my share screen now. And yeah, this is a small preparation of presentation I have. So the name of the film is Who is the Best? There is no dialogues in this film, but is this title. You just remember this title. And then we can discuss it later as I present this film to you. I hope you will have patience for 8 minutes only. If you have dog as a pet, then this might be a little bit difficult for you. But it's somehow important what I'm gonna to talk later. So let's just watch the film and I can continue after that. I share this film with you because whenever I walk, I always think first of visual narration. I always tend to first cut the scene as an editor. When I'm cutting the scene, I'm cutting it on mute, and I'm trying to tell the story of the scene or the sequence just by visuals, and then I would add the sound. That's something that I was trying to even in this early years of my career. I was still a student. I tried to always put just one sentence and add images to those sentences and just sound below it and try to explain a wider story behind it. And this was very difficult time for me because, you know, it's more or less this, it's very similar like going to war zones, right? When you do some things that you really don't like to do. And I was among these people, which I think they're still beasts, right? Like they're just pretending to be humans, but they're dealing with serious issues with their heads, with their mind, right? And what's the reason for this film? As I mentioned, it stayed in my mind back from my early teenage years. And that time I had an ambition to make a long film, following these owners of the dogs, while they have the dog as a pet, and it's a very small dog, and then they breed it, and then, you know, they pet it, and then the dog grows up, and then they throw it to the battlefield among the other dogs. And that was something for me really unacceptable, you know, dealing with issues that you really don't like to deal. It took me years to understand what I've done, right? And it was something that really shaped my idea about what film should be. I had this opportunity at a very early stage to see some documentaries that made an impact to me. Whenever I would watch something very important and very strong, I would have a serious issue by not being able to watch or listen to music or read anything for a week, maybe, which never happened for the fiction films. I always tend that documentaries, when they're dealing with real people, it really makes a strong impact. And so this motivation that really was kind of very important for me. It appeared that there is a important thing to follow while you make all these decisions and make why are you doing this, like as a filmmaker. It was my graduation film. It's called Quarter. I was inspired by a mockumentary that appeared in 1992 called Man Bites Dog. It's a Belgian film. It's about serial killer that allows the documentary team to follow him as he goes torturing and murdering people. And then the crew also becomes participant in these evil events. And for me, this was very interesting that I wasn't sure if this is a documentary or fiction. And this really affected me. And then I made a similar film. This is called Quarter. It's about a drug addict, which we followed as a documentary crew. And many people, after the film was done, you know, were approaching us and they thought it's a documentary. It was a strange thing also why I decided to make such film about a drug addict, because at age of 19, I lost a friend of mine that got overdosed, and it also influenced a lot. And it was somehow for me important to talk about things that really somehow matter for in your background. Then after the film studies, I was very curious to see the world outside, and I somehow ended up living in Vienna. And we were a group of people living in one apartment. Many of them were from the Balkans. Actually, there were 8 people in this apartment. 4 of them were from the Balkans, and 4 of them were from European Union. And each year we would have kind of issues to obtain visas. At that time, it was very turbulent. As you all know, Yugoslavia was falling apart. It was just fell apart, and then there was still wars raging around. And for us, traveling was very difficult, and living abroad was almost impossible. And it was real challenge to somehow deal with this bureaucracy things with visas. And some of the friends from the European Union proposed, why don't we get married to each other and then, become partners and then solve this issue. So for me as an aspiring documentary filmmaker, I said, this is a great opportunity. And I decided to make a film about it. It took me around 7 years to make this film. The first shooting actually was 2001, and the film was premiered 2009. At the beginning, no one believed in this film, actually, because it was very difficult to find the protagonist for this film, because, showing in front of the camera someone that is searching for a bride to get married to someone, and then showing it later, you're jeopardizing his stay there in this country. So I decided to do this experiment on my own. I went to Vienna with my camera. I found the best protagonist actually for this film. It was not about me, but about the best man that was helping me to provide this bride. I'm not sure if audience had chance to watch this film. Did they had it as a opportunity to watch it before? Should I play a trailer of this? Dina, what do you think?
Yes, we actually have it available on Volim Dokumentarce, which is Restart's VOD platform, and it was free for viewing in the region during this week as an introduction to the masterclass.
But if someone haven't seen
But you can show the trailer, yes, I think it's
quite interesting one, because it's about our mentality. What I'm saying all these things about, I'm always trying to explain the motivation behind all the things that I did. So,
Cura za venčanje se nalazi u diskotekama. U raznim kafićima. I posle nekog druženja, ako si u problemima, kaži da si u problemima i onda ćeš vidjeti kako ona reaguje. To je sada nova riba, novi splav, tako svaki dan. Ti i sestriće.
Pa u svom životu sam pravio flajere i dijelio flajere, ali ovakve nikad.
Are you serious?
Definitely.
Married.
Please read this. If you can help us, it will be very, very, very nice. Just read it. It's not a joke, okay? Znate vi za vjenčavanje sa Austrijankom nešto, za papir?
Pitaj švabici. Pa švabice pitajte tamo.
Pa ne, mislio sam da vi ne znate ono slučajno.
Papire švabice. Nemamo.
Nemate ni vi, a?
Pičko je!
Vidi ovo pičko, a? Ovo je novi piče za njim. Evo, gledaš? Vidi ovo. Ovo će mi kupiti za to. Ovako nešto za ženjenje?
Za co?
Za papire, aby se nekdo vidal.
So as you can see, this was a hilarious journey through Vienna immigrant milieu. And we had a kind of interesting time working on this film, which doesn't mean that it was easy, but the film appeared to be very funny. But what was also more important to this is that the film was dealing with a very serious subject. And I discovered that those juxtapositions actually works very, very good, in especially in documentary filmmaking. It appeared to be a festival hit. We ended up showing this film on many festivals, and somehow I start to believe that such film will bring me easier to the next one. But later on, I understood that actually the second film is probably more important than your first one. Because if you make a mistake with your second film, it can really have a serious issue for your future career, because everyone is expecting that you should make a even better one with a better film with the second one. So the next film, it took less than 7 years, but it took 5 years to make it. I had also serious problem to finance that film, because as a documentary filmmaker from this region, more or less no one trusts you. Whenever you need to sign a contract with someone, they really kind of feel you as a threat that something's not going to end up well. And of course, our region is quite turbulent, and I know why this feeling is present even now. So the next film I wanted to do was about completely something else, but I wanted to keep to the humor, and I was searching subject for humor that contains a lot of humor and talks about serious subjects. And I was searching a story among a funeral orchestra that started playing on weddings because they closed the chapel in the town that they were playing. And while making this film, we actually ended up making another film, which is called Avec l'amour. And for that film, it's about old professor, biology professor in high school, and he has a dream to open a museum of vintage cars. He's collecting the vintage cars, and he's doing this by, actually his wife is supporting him by making birthday cakes. So this film was a love story, and at that time no one was taking care about love stories. And we started collecting this material, and after some time we understood that we have a masterpiece behind this. But it was very difficult to attract any kind of money about this kind of a local subject. No one wants to see it, something that doesn't care about the Weltschmerz around us. But it was dealing with something very important. This film was dealing with small things that can make you happy, and we all of us forget about these small things. That was one upfront layer in this film. And we as a filmmakers, we knew that this is a really emotional and strong story. We presented it here and there, and all of the industry was kind of disappointed of our presentation and the story that we were presenting. We had all the elements. We had great trailer, we had interesting rough cut, but somehow they were not interested in love stories coming from this region. And that was very frustrating. I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to mention the budget of this film. It's really, really unacceptable to work under such conditions. Luckily, I was still an editor, and I had chance to edit various films. I was a successful editor, so I could survive out of editing films, fiction films, and then I would find some time in between and I would work on this film. So Avec l'amour appeared, we finished the film. We made a test screenings, and we understood that it's a really strong film. Let me show you a trailer about this film so you can understand more about it.
4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Dam ja 200, a за уши 1500 не радам почекаш. Да имам таблетка. Даваш ли ми даваш? Пари, кеш. Ти не си нормален. Не съм. Давай го запалай живот. Да, гледа. Дома ли сте? Добър ден те.
Piše da on 4 kolka, te?
6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 10. Уяу! Броя да не слуша. 32. Музей се работа да се направи. Градът има туристически белег.
Kakva radio stanica, kakva radio stanica, kakva smajnako, pogledajte, što sam ti tamo što đubrinjata, ti pa se praviš što si zakaš. Volim me kako što.
Svira i pum, pum, pum. Dobri li ste, dobar den te.
This film, what's very interesting about this film, when the director, Ilya, approached me with this material, he told me about this professor, and he was actually spending maybe already 2 years with him, shooting how he's collecting his old vintage cars. And there is this scene that is the last in the film, but actually it was first shot.
Аз не сакав да го правам волку помпезно. Се това, сакав да помине пубаво и еве ветувам пред сите, друг път вакво нешто не правам во живот. Леле, шо е ова? Ова е ключевиот. Да, бубата ли е? За това ли ми викат они запиши го броят?
Професоре, може да погледнете низ прозореца.
Ама вика, филм, он ми синот вика запиши го броят. Ова беше виќе врв на се. Зборови не се потребни и со ништо не можам да опишам задоволството не за клучевите за автомобилот, колку што се соживувате со мојата обсесија. Знак дека наидувам на разбирање за тоа што го посветив еден голем дел од мојот живот. Ви се заблагодарувам од се срце и ќе оставам тишината нека зборува. И сите ли? Ова е цела процедура и никој да не ми каже ништо.
And you can see the title behind the blackboard. So this was the first shooting day, actually, and we knew that we have the ending, the culmination of the film. And we needed to construct the beginning and the middle. And that's how the quest started. To come to the point, the film was finished, and still no one was interested, at least not in Europe. I'm going to repeat quickly. this was the last scene. Actually, this last scene in the film was the culmination of the film, which was shot first. And at that moment, we knew that we have the culmination, the catharsis of the film, and we started to construct the beginning and the middle. And that took us another 2 years to understand how to make the rest of the plot points. And but that wasn't the biggest problem. It was how to really quality spend the time with a crew, with real crew, with the shooting crew there. And we knew that we had a beautiful film. No one wanted to watch it. We were very patient with sending this film to festivals, and we ended up presenting it, premiering it in hot dogs. And whenever we would go, the audience would burst in tears towards the end. So it was a real sign that it was a really good film, but no one wanted to pay attention to it. We came back home and we made some kind of a press release. The media was completely not interested in that, and we were desperate to do something with it. I was about to quit filmmaking because it was really a struggle. And we came to an idea that maybe we should do some kind of a radical thing for the campaigning. What we did, let me just share the screen again. Yeah, that's the poster of the film. We really paid attention to the smallest details in this film. And what we did is we did a fake news. This was a part of another project at that time. What was happening? It was back in 2016 when it was the campaign of Trump. Donald Trump appeared to become a president to the United States, and it appeared that there was a group of kids in the same town where this film was done that helped him with fake news to bring him to have more votes for his elections, which was very strange. And we were hired to do a social experiment for this thing in what happened in Macedonia. And we tried to make this as a social experiment for our film. So what we did, we switched our phones. We were at Sarajevo Film Festival at the time, and we put this kind of a fake web page that it was nominated for an Oscar in August. And Steven Spielberg is talking about it, and Jay Leno is about to come to Macedonia and to visit this museum of old cars. And suddenly it became such a hot topic. It became viral, and everyone in our country was talking about it. We had our phones switched off and no one could contact us, but it appeared that suddenly all of these things started to explode. And we ended up having maybe one of the most watched films in our region, in our country. For example, you can see this. There was an open screening outside. We had an audience of 5,000 people. I mean, I've been to many places in the world, and I rarely see such a thing where 5,000 people would gather to watch a film. And our guy, the main protagonist, actually, they treat him as a rock star. It was such a strange to see all these things. He was a loser, and suddenly his life became completely changed. And I mean, this was very weird because it was about, for me, it was about to quit documentary filmmaking because I spent so many years and I didn't succeed to finance all of those films, even though they were very successful, as you can see. So I was about to say no to the next film, but it appeared that we started working on Honeyland. And as you already know, it becomes such a huge thing. It was the first time in Sundance that single film got 3 major awards. And we really changed a lot of things in the history of documentary filmmaking with this film. And I'm questioning myself. So this film, Avec l'amour, was a couple of years before that, and we was kind of making jokes. And we announced that and got an Oscar nomination in August, just to provoke the audience to come and see it. And suddenly, 2 years later, we had this film nominated for an Oscar. So what I can say is that, you know, I became a producer because no one else wanted to produce my films. But I guess I become the best editor among the producers and the best producer among the editors, which really somehow did something for my career. So what I follow as a principle of all of the things that I'm doing, and I'm also encouraging directors to discuss about 3 things. You know, these rules of the triads, you can find it in every aspect of our society. I mean, it's also everywhere. It's like you can find it in music, in science, in colors, in everything. So I follow these 3 rules. I'm always trying to ask myself, what's the story about? Why I'm making this film? Actually, why this scene or film is important, and how I'm going to make this film. So this is something that I really try to follow, and I'm always trying to make it very simple. Whenever I construct a scene, I would try to have beginning, middle, and end, and I would try to answer these 3 questions. What is the scene about? Why this scene is interesting? And how are we going to tell this scene? What's the core of the scene? What will be the beginning? What will be the end? What I found very important, actually, is that more important than this is the question why. I think the motivation of the author, especially, it's more important than the story itself. Even though some topic can be very interesting, I would always ask myself why I am the one that I'm going to do this film. So I'll go back a little bit with as I started my class here. It was about my first film about the dog fights, right? It stayed in my memory, and I had a huge motivation to work on this film that took me maybe 1 year in shooting to make just 8 minutes of a film. And then it was the graduation movie about a friend of mine that died from overdose, and I somehow made a film about it. And then no one wanted to talk about love, and this was very important for me. It's very emotional. I feel myself, I see myself as an emotional person, and this was very important for me to talk about love instead of all the issues that the world had. So what I think is why it's more important about what is your story about. And I'm always tending to follow this particular plot points whenever I'm making a film. And as you can see, we have this simple 3-act structure, which kind of implies with the rules of 3. And what's very interesting, what I do, how I am trying to find all these points, is I'm trying to use a lot of mathematics here. I would always find the middle of the film, and I would try to put the midpoint there. And as I'm analyzing all my films that I was editing, I succeeded to make these points really very accurate. Every film has kind of a straight timeline, and all these things were very precise. I think what I very tend to do, this is a small presentation. I'm not going to go deep in all of these points that we are seeing it here. But what is very important also for, not just as an editor, but also for the director, is that I always watch the whole material in the same order as they were shooting it. So if you bring me 400 hours of material, I will spend the same amount of time to watch this material from the beginning till the end. And this might feel that it's a little bit frustrating, especially for the directors, because it's really difficult to go through all the material. But this is a learning process that I somehow find it very important. What I tend to say is that each film is like encyclopedia for me. I'm learning so many things, different things about the culture, about the language, about, and this is the process where I'm learning most. And what's also interesting, because I'm seeing the material chronologically, and I can see what actually happened during the shooting, what kind of issues they had. And for me, what is very important is that to understand the director and to go in his head and to understand what kind of story he wants to make, which is particularly difficult. I mean, it's normal for directors to get lost in this process. Many years of shooting, you know, many days spent happening nothing in front of your camera, and you're losing self-confidence, and sometimes you're desperate to find the story, and the story is not appearing. But that's why editors are kind of very important, to stand next to them, to understand what they want to do, and to help them visualize their story. So in this particular watching the material, this stage of watching the material, I have some kind of ability to see the film after I see the whole material. I know, I somehow understand what the film will look like at the end. First rough cut, it's kind of difficult. Whenever we start doing the first rough cut, of course, this can take sometimes 4, sometimes 6, sometimes 10 weeks. Depends on how much material you are going to bring. And by the time, you know, we construct the first rough cut, and it may appear that that's not the film. Now we need to find another story. And what is very interesting in documentary films, especially as an editor, I found it very interesting because there is unlimited possibilities. There are so many possibilities to make the scene itself. And, you know, you can end up having the first scene as the last scene, and you can make a, you know, I feel it sometimes as a big white canvas, and you have so many colors in front of you, and you can paint and repaint the picture until you have the best thing. It's kind of a mosaic. And they tend to say every editor will make different cut of the film. So whenever editor comes on board, another editor will make another film. But I used to say, when you're doing a mosaic, there is only one comprehensible and good image when you see this mosaic from above. So no matter how many editors will get on board, we are tending to make this image not just comprehensible, but also beautiful. So that's why I think that, you know, it's really not important how many editors you're going to change. Sometimes, I mean, I have a lot of experience by editing together with my partner or with another editor. We share the material. At the beginning, we watch the whole material, and then I would do one character, or he would do the other character, or there is another workflow that we are doing. I would do the first rough cut, and I will make a break, and the second editor will appear after that, and we'll do second and the third cut, and then we will picture lock together. But if I go back to my presentation, what is also very important between the first rough cut and the next one is to make a distance. This is something that I always argue with the directors, because they are eager to see what they have done as a process of editing. But for me, it's very important when you start the editing. Sometimes actually I'm starting with the first shot, and then I'm walking by intuition. I would connect the next one and the next one and the next one, and I can preview the last scene that I was working on, but I would not go back the next day. I wouldn't screen what I've done. And in this case, it's much easier to come to the end, and then we screen the whole film without stopping. And between the first and the second or the third screen version, there might be a huge amount of time. But more we go, more we are sure what kind of film we would like to do, the time between the versions becomes shorter and shorter. Sometimes between version 7 and version 10, we have only a couple of hours to work on. But what I try to do is to walk one day, change some things, and then stop working for a day, and then make the screening the next day. Of course, this is difficult when you have deadlines and producers are jumping on your neck. But sometimes it appears that it's so crucial, because locating the problems are more important than finding the solutions, because very often we are lost to understand where the problem is. And what I learned during my experience is sometimes, especially towards the end of the film, there would be something incomprehensible, or some parts are boring, and I would change something at the beginning of the timeline, and it would completely influence towards the end of the film. And those are the small things that it's very difficult to find them, especially if you don't have any distance. So there were many directors trying to find this distance by doing some extreme sports between production and editing, or in between the screenings, or having a huge break. And I would really encourage you, if you have these opportunities when you're editing your films, to make a break, or to go work on the music and then come back and see what you have done. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand where your problems are. I'm also having a lot of issues. Most of my films, I would stuck, and I would say, okay, so how to proceed next? So also what is very important for all the things that I'm doing are the screenings, test screenings, we call it. So there are two types of screenings we are doing it. It can be with or without audience. And both of those screenings are particularly kind of tricky, because when you start, it's kind of easier when you invite audience for the screening, but then you can really get addicted to the audience. And after some time, it's very difficult to read your problems without audience. And sometimes audience could be completely wrong, because they don't know what your material is, and they don't know anything about the film. So it can really, these test screenings can really strain, and there can be a lot of problems if it doesn't go to the right direction. On the other hand, if you are doing a screening without audience, you don't have idea how people react on it. So this is another ability that I believe I somehow got it through the experience, I am not following the film so much, but I'm more trying to understand the audience. So I somehow compare it with watching a football game on a stadium or at home in front of your TV. So I believe that there is some kind of a collective emotion when you are watching film together or going on a football match and watch the film on the stadium. So there is something that, you know, it spreads around, and I can feel when the audience has some issue with some particular scene, or the second part of the film, it's kind of boring, or they can't understand. And this is something that, you know, you learn as you walk. So I can say that, you know, I gained quite a lot of experience with making screenings. And sometimes I'm just watching the audience, how they react. I know the film, of course, I've seen it 15 times. But catching those small moments when people are getting bored sometimes can really show you where the problem is. So why I'm saying all these things, I'm kind of sure that you will have many questions about Honeyland, because it was quite interesting thing. But what is very, very important to understand, that there are so many issues with dealing with this material all over and over for so many days and years. Sometimes it could really take you more years. So this is something that very few people talks about, right? And they don't really understand the issue behind being a documentary filmmaker. Probably you've heard about some cases where documentary filmmakers are really under pressure, and they are suffering from PTSD, or they have other issues. But I can also say that, you know, we editors are also experiencing the same thing. Whenever I would work on a film, you know, I'm so long with this material, and it can really, you know, I'm after some time I'm dreaming about the material, and sometimes I have, in my dreams, I have these problems that are present in the editing. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and a solution will appear. But also for other films, I would have insomnia going through all this heavy material that I would watch. So it's really heavy to understand where is a limit, and how much energy you need to spend for making such films. I mean, look, no one talks about these things, but it's really, really difficult, you know, because as a filmmaker, you know, no one, after you finish the film, audience spends 2 hours in the cinema, and they don't have a clue what's the background of it. And of course, they don't need to understand what was the background of it. But for you as a filmmakers, you need to understand how to get protected out of those things. It's something that there is no written rule for this, but it's kind of what I tend to do is that I really try to understand the director, because I'm going to spend a lot of time with this person. And at the beginning, everything is smooth, but towards the end, there are a lot of tensions. How to actually deal with this? I don't have a particular answer for this, but I can say that, you know, all these issues are transferred to the editors, and that really makes something that, you know, makes you a difference between editor and good editor. And the most difficult thing that I found during this journey that I had to the documentary films is how to deal as an editor and producer. When you're editing films, you really need to do it with a lot of heart, with a lot of emotions. But producing films, you have to somehow, cancel those things, and you need to be very pragmatic. And this is something that it can really, really affect to your mental health. So talking about Honeyland now, what I can say is that, very few people knows about the background of the story. I'm sure you have questions about what would be the scenes that would be staged in this film. We can discuss. Maybe someone can ask this question even now, so we can just raise more discussion about it, because I have it here prepared in my background. I have prepared the whole timeline, so we can also follow in some things, and then you can see if we are going through the timeline. If I also show you the 3-act structure, so these plot points were very well and precisely done. So when the family arrives into the village, it's minute, let me see, this is minute 12, I think it's 15. And if we see the timeline, this is the whole timeline. Find this, yep, this is the moment when they arrive, and it's here. It's quite precise, right? It's here. And the catharsis of the film would be when she put curse on them and they leave. And it's here. That's the climax of Act 2. And the midpoint would be when the bees attacks Atanas bees, which is not exactly on the middle, but it's the big twist. It's here when they don't respect the rule half of half. So how I'm working on this is that actually, as I said, I'm trying to make a visual narration first and then put the sound and to understand how it works with sound. With this particular film, what was very interesting is that it was the crew, no one understood this dialect, Turkish dialect that protagonists were talking. So we edited, the first version of this film was cut completely in mute. So we didn't know what they were talking. And, we were imagining things like, at one point we had an idea to make this film without subtitles. When we first time presented it, we showed the material of 30 minutes, and no one needed to understand what they're talking about, but the story was very comprehensible. We could see how the images tell the story. But on the end, it appeared that it's kind of difficult, and it looked like an error because people were talking, but no subtitle there. So, of course, we started to do the transcript, and we freaked out because all the things that we were imagining that they are saying, we found them in this material. This was something that, it's very, very rare. So what's also kind of interesting to mention about this film, it was shot 100 hours, 100 days, duration of 100 days. And they would go, the crew was 2 cinematographers and 2 directors without the sound recorders, because there was no place in the car for the 5th person. So they would go just for the weekends, and they would bring material. And I was included from the very early stage of this film. And usually editors would complain if the director brings you a lot of material. So there were 2 cinematographers, and also the directors would use their cameras. So sometimes they used 4 cameras for a scene. And it really, it was a huge amount of material. But whenever they would come back, they would bring some kind of a pearl inside in all this material that I never dared to say, okay, don't shoot so much. But the most interesting part out of this, because I was also included in the beginning of this film process, I had this chance to work closely with them, with the whole crew, and to focus them on the things we needed for the film. So throughout all these 100 days of shooting, we would really carefully, we would have stages like, okay, so let's make the trailer for the development, and they would, we would discuss only about the material, but maybe not working on it. So then we would spend a couple of weeks only working on the trailer, and then sometimes after we would, check all this new material that would come. So we will start making the structure. And it took us somehow, I would say it wasn't so long. It was 25 weeks, which is kind of normal for editing with such a huge material. But it was very precise also. We, as far as I remember, and I can also, if you're interested, I can show you the first and the last cut. We constructed the structure even with the first timeline. That was kind of amazing. So the story shaped why I also appreciate all this this kind of a workflow. What I found out is that filmmaking process is really difficult because in comparison with the other art forms, you're never doing the films that you're working on here and now. When you're composing, you can express yourself immediately, and you can make music immediately, and something goes out from you, and then you're creating. Literature is the same, theater is the same, you name it. But filmmaking, you never know what you're doing until you come to the cutting room. Then it's the first time when something starts to get born, and then you're feeling the story that comes in front of you. So that's why I'm somehow most attracted, being in the cutting room instead of, doing all these things around. And I found myself as a person that can really understand the directors. They sit here in this couch behind me, and we would spend many hours, and sometimes it's quite difficult. It's been said like that editors are actually shrinks for the directors, just less paid. It's some kind of a curse that we are going through. But there is this amazing feeling when you're seeing the birth of the film in front of you. So Honeyland was exceptionally interesting because, all these things that were connected next to each other. What we did is that we put the first shot, and then we would go for the next shot. What would be the next shot that would fit best to it? And I mean, it was a destiny, a couple of years before we were joking and making fake news, thinking that, you're doing great films, but no one watched them. Then suddenly something happens and you're becoming part of the mainstream. But I would like to leave some space because I know how attractive Honeyland and the process behind it is. So maybe I can give you some space to ask questions. So maybe we can have some more interaction here. Dina, do we have any kind of questions so far?
We're still checking. I don't think so. No. On Facebook.
It was too boring, so no one watched and followed.
No. I guess they're a bit shy.
Yeah, it's difficult when we don't see each other, but yeah, like in the COVID times.
Yeah, Maybe you guys can put your videos on in the Zoom.
But you know what? After Honeyland, it was the last year when the environment was important as a story in the filmmaking industry. After that, pandemic started, and then the war between Russia and Ukraine started. And then no one takes care about the environment anymore. So the industry completely switched. And we were somehow lucky that it was the last year that festivals and audience were really taking care about environment. I mean, I had this chance to walk on Against the Tide. It's a really beautiful film that we finished it last year. It's a story about two friends, fishermen in Bombay. And one is poor, and he's doing fishing in a traditional way in the shallow waters. And the other one is the rich guy, and he's doing fishing in the deep sea with using LED. And their lives start to complicate because there was no fish anymore in the sea. So we were following these two friends. And this film, I think it's beautifully made. It's real direct cinema. It really took some attention for the festivals, but somehow I can feel that the audience and the programmers are somehow strained from something important for the planet. So in the last year, I somehow turned to work on the war films. Unfortunately, it was not so pleasant to work on those films, but I may say that I ended up working with beautiful people. And first time in my life, I met directors that really had cause for filmmaking. For example, I worked with Ibrahim Nashat. He's an Egyptian guy that went to Afghanistan and risked his film to shoot with Taliban. And behind him was Talal Derki. He did Of Fathers and Sons. And I ended up working with them. And I was very surprised to understand that actually there are people really risking their own life to show to the world something that it's important. But firstly, it's important for them because they belong to that world that they were showing this material out of there. And then let me just tell you one interesting story about it. Since I was learning material at the beginning, I spent like 4 weeks of learning what the material is behind. And I was wondering how you can make a film with Taliban, with only male people, with beards, killers, and to make this film interesting. I would say it's very difficult to make film only with antagonists. I would try to find, something to compare it with literature. And I can say, okay, maybe Macbeth from Shakespeare, it's something like to compare it with a film, a story only with antagonists. But on the end, Macbeth, it's really one of the most not so interesting piece out of Shakespeare's works. So while we were watching this material, I could hear, because they all had wired microphones on them, I could hear them when they go back in the other room and they would talk with their women. And I found it as a great idea to show this world behind the doors. But as I was learning this material, I realized that as soon as we show this as a part of the story, most probably these women will be executed. And I am paid as an editor to give opinions, to make to ask and raise questions. So this was particularly difficult for me to, propose something that might be jeopardizing someone's life. And it was never before. I mean, the previous films, we would never jeopardize anyone with their lives. Maybe there would be other issues, but you would never put someone in such position, right? So I had maybe 2 weeks of insomnia, trying to to find another way, or I was thinking to quit even. But after that, I realized that these guys that I'm working with, they are so grounded, and they would never do such thing. So we never actually went to that direction to jeopardize anyone's life. And then I learned another culture over there. I really, we as filmmakers, we are curious and we know many things. But when you go deep into the material, when you're doing such things, you're really starting to understand even the deepest layers. And what is very interesting in this film, we managed to make a film only with antagonists. I thought it's impossible. And we somehow make them, at the same time they were humans, but it was scary to see what these humans are ready to do. Especially because what is the story about this film is that it starts when the last American soldier leaves Afghanistan, and then Taliban is taking over, and we followed one foot soldier and his boss. He was he was put as a general of the air forces, and the director followed them for a year, and we see how they progress from a militia to a regime. And what was kind of interesting, no one complained why we are following only male people, bearded killers that would like to kill, all their neighbors, and they treat their women as animals. But even in these layers, we could find layers of humor that brings you towards the end. It really scares you. But I'm trying to, to directly expose all my experience that I have as an editor, which really shaped me as a person also, because I think it's not just craft, what you're learning throughout the filmmaking process. I have an issue to understand, but many people are saying that films can change the world around you. I'm not so sure about that. I've seen so many attempts for films to change the society, but very few made any kind of difference. But what I found very important in this filmmaking process, that it changes you as a person. So each film makes you more stronger, makes you more. It's a different things that you're learning, and if you start changing yourself, then you have opportunity to change something around you. Otherwise, I don't think that any kind of film can change societies. There were so many attempts, to influence on elections, or I don't know, to save environment, or I don't think that anyone succeeded to do anything. But maybe we can start some kind of an interaction. I'm not feeling so well just to talk to myself. Maybe we can somehow provoke the audience. How much audience do we have? I see how many people? Or maybe we have the live stream.
Yeah, we have 7 here, and I think we have around 30 on Facebook.
Okay. And no one asks anything. That's weird. Okay, maybe I was too boring.
We have two questions, well, a couple of questions related to Honeyland. So the first one is, can you tell us a bit more about what is staged? You already kind of touched upon this in the beginning.
We've been asking these things, like, is it staged, this or that? But, you know, I found it very legitimate to ask your protagonist to go back and forth with the same clothes, you know, just to connect dots from A to point B when they walk, you know, when they need to transfer your protagonist to another location. And for example, we had this question like, did you set the arrival of the family? Like, did we send them to arrive on the spot so we can shoot it?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, no, we didn't send them because it's easy. For example, it's very easy to follow them because they travel with 100 cars from point A to point B. It's very slow travel. So you can really make a good position with your camera, shoot the things you need to have, and then construct to actually shoot the opposite angle when you see the main protagonist watching them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually very legitimate because you're constructing a flashback. These people were there before. They would come every season and they would leave every season. But there was a point when they first came, and there will be a point when they will leave forever. So in our story, we have flashback and flash forward that some people may find it constructed, but for the sake of the dramaturgy, this is very normal. You know, I always encourage directors to find those moments that creates the plot points. Otherwise, you will end up having talking heads only. Every fiction film should look like a documentary, and every documentary film should look like a fiction. And we really managed it with this film. You know, we used some tools that are very legitimate. But I'm always arguing with people, what makes the documentary real documentary? Is it the surveillance camera over there a real documentary? Can you make a film just with the surveillance camera? Maybe you can, but whenever you do the cut, you're intervening. And I don't think that interventions are a bad thing. I mean, if we are talking about storytelling, you can't work without dramaturgy. So these are the things that I encourage directors to, you know, to think. There is a difference if you change the truth. The truth must stay the same. Whatever tools you're using to explain, to make it comprehensible, it's more important than to, you know, stay just as a direct cinema or just to follow the character from behind. So there is nothing staged in Honeyland.
That would be the short answer.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question regarding Honeyland. Can you tell us what the influence of the film crew on the protagonists was during and after the screening?
Let me show you these photos. This is very interesting. I mean, they never went out of their surrounding, right? So we somehow started getting attention, you know, international attention, and it was their first time when we brought them to cinemas. There are they, first time in cinema. You can see the girl here, right? And Hatice at the beginning, she was sitting here, right? And there was a long speech from the Swiss ambassador or whatever, some boring thing. And she asked me, are we going to see the film on this big white screen there? So I realized that actually she never went in the cinema. Of course, she never went to cinema. I mean, she was living in this terrible conditions for so many years. But what was very interesting, I was not watching the film, but I was really analyzing how they react on the film. So what was very interesting at some point, when the scene with when the girl was drowning into the river, and she was really having a trauma about that, and when then that scene appeared, I saw her. She was trying to take a breath and to stand and to get out of the water, and it happens in cinema. So I suddenly realized that there is such a strong magic behind the cinema that we are all, we are not getting it anymore. And I felt it like back in the past with the first screening of the Brother Lumiere, when they were screening the shot with the train coming into the station, when the people were jumping out of the street. So these people were behaving like that. And it was very extraordinary experience to see these things. But, in anthropology, there is a rule: whenever you deal with such people, turn your back and erase your contacts. Here, it was very difficult to do that, because we live in a very small environment, and, people are, very difficult in our region. And we really had a strong public pressure to do something with the protagonist, because this is very difficult, which means every film. Whenever you do a great documentary, you are starting hitting the red carpets, and these are this kind of glamorous bullshit that is happening around, and your protagonists are back in the mud. So how to deal with this? This is really difficult thing. It's something that you really can't understand what would be the best way how to deal. We had a plan to, just to leave them behind. Maybe that's the best, because we changed their lives so much, and I'm afraid that at some moment there will be a issue that we provoked it, but we can't handle it anymore. So far, so good. I think the pandemic really saved many things, especially about this story. But I was really scared that this other family that were presented as villains, at some point their kids are rising, and they don't really have the same attention as Atij is having. So who knows when would be the moment when there would be a even bigger conflict. And whatever happens with them, they blame us. No matter how much we really did for them after the film, we accepted that we provide a house for Atij and many other things for the other family. We also had a legal support, a social worker, and a psychologist working with them. And also we did so many other things for the community and for the surrounding around. But whatever we touch, it would be just a disaster, because we changed so much. And suddenly the price of the honey went so high at that region that the villagers hit the bees around. So in a few years, there will be a desert over there. It's not funny at all. When you see all these things happening in front of your eyes, it looks like, yeah, we are doing a mainstream and something is really important that we are doing, but actually we are messing with things that we don't know where they go. And it's really difficult. I still have issues about, what's going to be next. And it's more or less with every film. There are a few films that it was really a happy ending. I mean, the Avec l'amour film was something that I really appreciate. Even the process and the outcome of the film was really interesting, because this guy, he was a loser, and suddenly he appeared to be, the most interesting person in our country. And people would come from, remote countries, from very far away, to visit his museum. So that was a happy end. But for the rest of the films, I would say there was always people that wouldn't be so happy with the outcome of the film. So yeah, it's quite difficult. I still don't understand why, after so many agonies that you are going through documentaries, why people are still doing documentary films. I'm questioning this thing always.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you would do it again if you knew this negative outcome.
Yeah.
Okay. We have one more question. What is your approach in the beginning of the editing process? Where do you start and why?
By watching the material, let's say, by really paying attention, not just watching the material, but also to understand what happened to the crew, to the director, to choose that path. And the journey that he has to learn everything that he was, learning as a director through this journey. And maybe this is the crucial thing. I see this that this learning process is really a crucial thing. And then I'm doing just simple things. I always tend to make it very comprehensible. If I need to understand this person, this character in the film needs to bring something, I tend them to put them back to back to be very understandable, very comprehensible. Comprehensibility is number one. Whatever you do, you must not question things that are not important for the film. So I always thought that, walking by the book will bring you to all the hidden layers that you want to tell. Because if you start, by telling everything, you may end up telling nothing. So if this is a story about a person that goes from point A to point B, let's make it very comprehensible. Let this person comes to point B, that we understand that this person is just walking from point A to point B. And then let's add layers on the end when we are really understanding what's the mechanical walk in this scene. Then let's put layers in it. And layer comes by just tweaking and balancing things. Suddenly I also find things that other people are discovering in my films. I can't find this layer, so someone will approach years after the film is done, and he would find the layer. And it's only because we balance to the last detail.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you answered. We have one more question in the chat here in Zoom. It's from Clara. So you talked about the promotion and marketing strategy of Avel Amor when you talked about the use of fake news. What do you think is a good way or strategy to get the audience interested in the documentary now?
Well, we did that out of desperation. It wasn't like, it was a very brave thing to do also. I mean, desperation brings you to some weird solutions that you will invent things that never happened before. And I think that it's kind of important to, at least when we come to our regional surrounding, it's kind of important to, to attract your audience by something that was never done before. And I guess there is always something to be provoked and to find a way how to do it. I mean, this was very extreme what we did. I remember a previous campaign that we did. We made the crop circles into the field, and we put a friend of ours would go above.
For the same film, or?
No, it was another thing. It was more or less a corporate thing that we were doing at the time. But this, I really encourage these guerrilla things. Maybe just me, and it's not very useful for every project, but for some, at least in our region, it can really help. So a good way or strategy to get the audience interested in documentary. I mean, what I can see is that more and more people are attracted by documentaries because truth is something that we are searching for more than we searched it before. We are so overwhelmed with fake news and with fictional characters around us that documentary is starting to be not just provocative, but also we are seeing real people, real stories. And this is something that artificial intelligence won't be able to do it ever. And artificial intelligence are threatening the film industry. But I don't think that it can be, done with the documentaries. So this is something that whatever the documentary talks must use the truth as the most powerful weapon. And that can help shape your campaign for the audience. And there are many ways how to, to find a way. Maybe you can ask me about some other films, and then maybe we can analyze the strategy that they were using it with the one that I did. For example, in Honeyland, it was word by mouth. Mm-hmm. Everyone talked about the film, and our distributors never. They said, I could feel that they never believed that it would make such a strong audience, such an impact. And we had the same distributor as Parasite. It was Neon, and they were pushing the both films for the Oscar campaign. And I could see the difference, how they were treating Parasite and how we were they treat us. And at that time we were very proud that this film was done very. Maybe it was the cheapest film that ended up on the Oscars. But by time, you learn that this is something that maybe you don't need to expose in a advanced stage. Then you're losing, many things, not just money, reputation. I think that, documentary doesn't belong to the Oscar. This is very weird. It's really like a wedding party, and that the groom and the bride are going to get divorced the next day. And you're still going there and need to put some fake smiles. Documentary people doesn't belong there. And we never wanted to bring Atija there. It was such a disappointment for her. She got used to earning all the prizes around. And when we didn't got the Oscar, she was so disappointed. It was crazy. And I never saw her so devastated. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't our fault that she started traveling around. The first screening because the idea was to bring them only in the first screening in Macedonia, in the capital, and then to bring them back and never call them back. But it was the Swiss ambassador that asked her to go in Switzerland on the next screening, and he would be the host for her. And of course, she accepted it. It was her first time in the plane. It was her first time in the hotel. I mean, it was for us, documentary filmmakers, this is very interesting for analyzing. It's very rare opportunity to touch those things. But on the other hand, it's an evil thing we did. And I don't think that we had choice, actually. We would be crucified on the main square if we didn't brought her to the Oscars. It was so weird at that time. She was so popular. I can tell you an anecdote. There was this famous costume designing studio on the main square, and there is a short walking distance from the parking to the studio. It's like 5-minute walking. So she was supposed to go there and prepare her suit for the Oscars. And we managed to walk this for 40 minutes everyone on the street would stop her and asking for autograph, to touch her, to I mean, at the beginning, it's kind of interesting to be, part of the, the celebrity world, but it's so overwhelming.
So she struggled with it.
At the beginning, I think it was very interesting for her, but then she went back into her surrounding, and then are the problems starting, right? Who's going to pay the electricity bill? Right? We are not social workers. I would really like to help her with everything that I have, but this is, I mean, if we suddenly give them a big amount of money, we've heard such stories that someone can come and kill them for this money, and there will be such a huge fight between them if you give them the money. So what we did is we arranged a campaign for them. We made the fundings for them, and we gave this money as an installment, and they're still going on, by the way.
Okay, well, thank you, Atanas, for your masterclass, and our time is actually up. So thank you once again. It was very inspiring. You answered our questions, and hopefully we will see you sometime in Zagreb.
Thank you for inviting me.
Live in
really
person.
sorry that I didn't have a chance to come in front of you in person, but I hope that it wasn't so boring, and you got
Not
some
at all.
out of this masterclass.
Hope, and with some of your next films, hopefully they will be screened in Croatia, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure there will be screened. Yeah, all of them, they're masterpieces, so just don't forget those titles.
we can't miss them.
Yeah, you can't miss them.
So hopefully we will see you in Zagreb then soon.
Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the day, and see you around. Bye-bye.